Hello, everyone. Once again, welcome to the Cafe on Air podcast. As you know, I'm Big Italy 42. He is Spencer Limbach at Spencer_JL. And unlike last night's catastrophe of a slate, we have a lot of really nice, enticing games tonight, a lot of great matchups, and I'm excited to get it going. How about you?
Yeah, pretty excited too. I actually took the night off last night. Looking back at it in hindsight, I'm kind of glad I did. Unless you stacked the Golden State Phoenix game, there's some pretty spotty production all around. But yeah, excited for tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did not sit out last night. I was at the Cavs Heat game. I played, of course, a lot of Cavs Heat players, and Dwayne Wade being included. So my few tournament bullets were gone quickly.
Sorry for that.
No, that's fine. I wasn't too worried about it. I wasn't expecting the Heat to put up a fight, so it was a good time either way. But it's going to be a better time coming on here talking about some FanDuel and DraftKings. So we're going to be starting off talking about point guard as we do. And as I've been looking at it this morning, and I haven't really talked to you about this. Sometimes we talk before the shows about specific plays, but I don't think I'm going to be paying up at point guard tonight. How about you?
Probably not, and unless more value opens up. That's usually the theme when it comes to guys like Russell Westbrook and anyone over the 12K range, is that you really need the injury information in order to roster them. Get the cheap guys to enable you to click them into your roster. But the way things lie right now, I'm probably not going to pay up. The highest I'll go, I'm looking at Elfrid Payton. He's 7.9K on FanDuel. I think that's a reasonable tag, maybe a little bit inflated, but great matchup. This should be a close game with Orlando on the road, even though Minnesota has a bunch of rookies and D-leaguers. Orlando's not really, capable of blowing people out on the road. So I like Elfrid Payton in that spot, and that's probably the highest I'll go.
Yeah, I'm with you there, and he's 7.5 on DK as well. So two teams that are both seemingly incapable of playing defense, really don't have any desire to play defense, also have nothing to play for. So this one should have plenty of fantasy production to go around for two teams that care nothing more than just to put up some stats tonight. And Kevin Martin, everyone's favorite late scratch, is officially probable, I saw, for tonight's game. So enjoy that. I'm not touching him no matter what happens. I don't care if he's probable. He's not making my rosters tonight.
Well, he could play only 20 minutes. I could see that being pretty realistic, that they're just, go out there for a little bit of run, have some fun, and then, we'll put the young guys in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, his price tag, no thanks. I'm not even putting him in any tournaments. Like you said, maybe he plays 20 minutes. Maybe he's probable and sits. Or maybe he's not on the injury list and sits. Who knows? Just not a situation I want to be involved with. Yeah. So elsewhere at point guard, there's a couple of guys that have been absolutely on fire. We're obviously going to have to talk about Deron Williams. $6,600 on FanDuel, 61, even better on DraftKings. And he's been playing great basketball. Obviously, the last game, you kind of expected it against terrible Knicks backcourt. But tonight, he's going to get Grievous Vasquez, where Kyle Lowry's doubtful. We assume he's probably not going to play tonight or maybe even the next game. So he's in a good spot once again, and he's got a cheap price tag. And he's one of my favorite mid-range guys once again.
Yeah, absolutely. I always kind of make a preliminary FanDuel lineup before we come on the show, and he's definitely on it. He was one of the first guys I clicked in. Just a great price point, great recent production, and the matchup lines up. So, I mean, I think he's going to be one of the more popular players, but I think you're foolish if you fade him in cash games.
Yeah, especially at that price, like you said. I mean, it's just he's playing at a much higher level than his price suggests, so He makes for a great value. One other guy is Jordan Clarkson, and his price on FanDuel has really risen, $7,500. A little bit too steep for me there. But on DraftKings, $6,400. And his last two games, he's obviously shooting very, very well. I mean, he's 16 of his last 24 of his last two games. You don't expect he's going to keep that up. But 10 assists, 11 assists, 7 rebounds, 6 rebounds over his last two games. The guy has huge upside, and as we know, Portland, a defensive-minded team, but if you see some Damian Lillard, he has been the worst point. I don't know if it's statistically the worst. I think it is, but he's been giving up monster games to opposing guards. And I mentioned it the other day with Chris Paul, and Chris Paul just did whatever he pleased. So I like him and Jeremy Lin as well.
Well, yeah, here's the thing with Portland's defense. I think Scott Melwick touched on it in one of his articles on Daily Fantasy Cafe earlier this year. So if you want to go back and reference that. But they like to funnel the production to point guards. Just how they defend pick and rolls, they just let the point guard go, basically, and they cover every other spot. So looking at that, yeah, Jordan Clarkson could have himself another big game. And Jeremy Lin, he's still battling illness. Maybe not as effective, maybe not as aggressive as, he can be. So you look at those two items, and yeah, I like Clarkson in all formats pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, he's the player of the future for the Lakers, and maybe it was sad to say that maybe a month or so ago, but he really is playing great basketball, so I'm a big fan.
One thing I should mention is he's 7.5K on FanDuel, 6.4K on DraftKings, so definitely much easier to work in over on DraftKings.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could play he and Deron Williams for just 12.5 on DraftKings, and you got significant upside and some pretty nice floors as well. Elsewhere at point guard, there's some riskier guys, but also some cheaper guys. Grievous Vasquez, obvious play if Kyle Lowry sits out. Not a huge upside type of guy, but a nice high floor. Should get you 20 to 25 fantasy points. Is going to play 30 minutes. And he's sitting at 4,100 on FanDuel, 5,000 on DK. Not a bad price, I guess, but I would much prefer him on FanDuel because he really doesn't have much upside there.
Yeah, FanDuel's the way to go with him, especially when you have to lock in 2 point guards there. You could put him in at your number 2 point guard and, reach up elsewhere. So, yeah, I like him as a safe play in that range.
Yeah. One other guy I want to mention here, and then I'll see if there's anyone else you've got on your list. Zach LaVine, already mentioned how bad Orlando has been against point guards. They've been pretty bad against every position, just not a good defensive team at all. LaVine, not a tremendous basketball player in his own right, but locked into huge minutes. He's been playing even in blowouts. Really doesn't matter. He's almost obligated to play nearly 40 minutes per game. And actually over 40, 42 or more in 4 of his last 6. Ricky Rubio, once again, doubtful. So Zach LaVine, by opportunity alone, is worth a look tonight.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of had Mike Conley on my list also in that same range. I would say Conley might be a better cash game play. Playing up in pace against Oklahoma City, and Russell Westbrook really isn't interested in defense right now. But yeah, I like the pick with LaVine too, especially for tournaments. And you look at his last few games, he's playing like 42-plus minutes. Took 17 shots last game. So, I mean, if he's seeing that type of volume, then again, some of it may be hurt by Kevin Martin coming back, depending on how much he plays. I mean, he could siphon some shots away from him. So, but yeah, I like LaVine for tournaments.
Yeah, and I like that Mike Conley pick as well. I mean, the guy can kind of do it all, and he hasn't shot particularly well over his last 2 games, just 8 for 25, but still 27 and 32 fantasy points on DraftKings. So definitely a guy with a nice high floor and, playing up in pace, like you said. Westbrook doesn't care about defense right now, doesn't really care seemingly about anyone but himself on the floor most times. So Mike Conley could be in line for a nice night there, right around that price. And as we know, Grizzlies always go way under-owned, especially on bigger slates. So he makes for a great tournament play also. All right, anybody else you want to talk about here at point guard? Or are you ready to move on to the 2?
That's pretty much it.
All right, moving on to shooting guard here. We've got no obvious top option, James Harden, tonight, which I'm glad about because there's some other pricey guys I'd like to pay for. But you've got Jimmy Butler sitting at $8,600 on FanDuel and $8,000 on DraftKings. And he's in a great spot tonight, and he's back to, his big Jimmy minutes, playing 40. It should be maybe not quite 40 today because they are a 12-point favorite in this game, but Jimmy Butler is going to be a big part of whatever happens with them tonight. So I still like Jimmy Butler quite a bit.
Yeah, I like Jimmy Butler up there. I'm just kind of debating between him and Oladipo. Oladipo also in a pretty good spot against that bad Minnesota defense. Playing up in pace, should be a semi-competitive game. Yeah, I really like him there. I think him and Butler are pretty equal. So, I mean, if you really don't have the cash, the extra $500, $600 to get Jimmy into your lineup, I think Oladipo is, pretty safe fallback right there.
Yeah, and you can get Oladipo $7,500 on DraftKings, $82 on FanDuel. So another discount there on the DK side. So like that call as well. Obviously, DeMar DeRozan is going to be a popular play once again with Kyle Lowry assumed out, listed as doubtful, like we said. So not much analysis needed there. Lowry's out. He gets a higher usage rate. Move on. Elsewhere at shooting guard, we have Joe Johnson, who's been playing well. Always a risky guy. I mentioned it a couple days ago on the podcast that whenever I play him, he puts up a dud. But I did play him the other day. Not his greatest performance. I mean, you look at 9 points, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, 4 steals, but 28 fantasy points was more than enough to pay off that tag. So I think he makes for an interesting tournament play as well.
Yeah, I like him. Probably more on FanDuel, where you have to have 2 shooting guards. He's got a friendlier price point, 5.9K compared to 6.1 on DraftKings. And if you factor in the average salary, average roster spot, that actually is a bigger discount on FanDuel, even more than that $200. But anyway, yeah, I like him in that spot. Good matchup against Toronto at home. Yeah, he's a good high upside tournament play.
All right, well, I'm going to get your take on someone here who is pretty pricey on FanDuel. I think you know where I'm going with this one, but he's listed as a point guard on DraftKings. Evan Turner. Been taking a lot of shots, as we know. Not the best actual physical player in the NBA, as we know. Pretty ugly jump shot, but the guy kind of can do it all. He's been taking more shots, pretty much double-digit shots. Each of our 7 of the last 8 games, it looks like. 7 of the last 9 games. So Evan Turner coming off a triple-double, an ugly triple-double, but that's the only kind he's capable of. 5,900 at point guard on DraftKings, 72 at shooting guard on FanDuel. Are you looking at Evan Turner in tournaments at all tonight?
Only in tournaments, obviously. That's pretty much the theme with him, always, for his career.
Always will be.
But, yeah, they're still limiting Isaiah Thomas to about 20 minutes a game, which, before injury, he was up 30, 35. So, in that regard, yeah, he's going to see that opportunity. I think it's pretty consistent that he's going to get those opportunities. Whether he makes good on them, I don't know. I mean, that's Evan Turner for you. But, yeah, he's worth a couple. If you're making multiple lineups and tournaments, definitely look towards him in a few.
Yeah, and that's the risk, like we said, with Evan Turner. I mean, he's got a low floor, but for someone, especially at that price range, 5,900 at point guard on DraftKings, could be a sneaky play with some big triple-double upside. I mean, you might not want to watch it, but it's a good thing to take advantage of afterward. Elsewhere at shooting guard, there's not a whole lot to like down low. Anthony Morrow's been playing particularly well, very well actually, but I'm not forcing him in on a 10-game slate against Memphis. I don't think that's necessary. Who else are you looking at here at the shooting guard position?
Call me stubborn, but Contavious Caldwell-Pope, maybe again. He had a pretty brutal outing last time around. Played 14 minutes, got into foul trouble, and then Detroit got blown out. So, I mean, I think you can just throw that out of the equation. I really don't think it carries much significance moving forward. And, I mean, we've said it before on this podcast. He sees more shots with Greg Monroe out, higher usage rate. I'm looking at him more on FanDuel. He's discounted over there, sitting at 4.9K compared to 5.7 on DraftKings. So, I mean, worth more a look over there. Otherwise, same range. Looking at Lou Williams. He hasn't been lately, but he's right around 25 fantasy points per game, which is all you really need at that price point, 5.K on FanDuel. A little more expensive over on DraftKings, 5.4K. But, yeah, those two they're options down there if you're looking to fill out that shooting guard spot, particularly your second one over on FanDuel.
Yeah, and I like both those calls, both those guys on my radar as well. There's a couple of cheap guys if you want like a single bullet type of tournament. Give me your thoughts on this. Obviously, a very risky play, but he's been playing well. Just only $4,000 on DraftKings. Markel Brown, 35, 31, 36 minutes his last 3, 28, 20, and 33 fantasy points. Obviously not a cash game play, but I think he's worth a flyer in a tournament. He's been taking 8+ shots these last 3 games, seeing minutes.
I don't know if I'll go that route. I won't criticize anyone. Do we know why is he seeing more minutes all of a sudden? Because he was just seeing like 15 minutes a game for a while.
Yeah.
Is there an injury that happened, or is it just they're putting him back in the rotation and that's what it is?
I think he's just been playing well, so they're kind of riding with the hot. I don't know if it's necessarily a hot hand, but the relevant hand. And we've been seeing Bojan or Bogan, however you say his name. He's been seeing a lot less minutes. He was seeing right around 30, so I think that he's been taking away minutes from from Bojan over there. So I think that's the main difference there.
Yeah. I mean, look to him towards tournaments, especially if you need someone cheap in that range.
Yeah, I mean, single bullet only, of course. I'm not telling you to force him in all your lineups. But if everyone else fits, you got a cheap guy, I think you could do much worse. All right, moving on to small forward. As we know, Rudy Gay is out with the concussion still. My favorite play at small forward, and it's not going to be Kawhi Leonard for once. I feel like that's been, every single time it's been Kawhi Leonard, right? Not today.
Who are you?
Andrew Wiggins. Orlando, worst in the league against small forwards, pretty bad against shooting guards too, wherever Wiggins ends up spending most of his time. He's been playing well, getting back to his scoring ways from early in the season. And like we mentioned, I mean, just no defense on the other side here. And Andrew Wiggins has the size and the length. I think he's going to be in line for a nice night. And Kawhi Leonard, with the blowout concern, may not even see the fourth quarter today.
Yeah, I like that call. I had Kawhi on my list. Obviously, you have to consider that blowout factor, like you said. But otherwise, good matchup. Denver ranks 27th against small forwards. But yeah, let's get back to Wiggins here. I also like Wiggins. I just want to say that at first, but I'm going to play devil's advocate here and say, with Kevin Martin back, that could hurt his stock a little bit, depending on how much Kevin Martin plays. And Wiggins is one of those guys who, I mean, he needs the opportunity. He's not going to, take his shots. The shots have to basically come to him. And if Kevin Martin's out there chucking, I don't know if he's going to see that same volume. Obviously, great matchup that'll probably sustain his value. But the price point is also rising because he has been great as of late. So just a couple things to consider in that spot. I still like him in there. I just don't know if he's like a lock or a core player, as you would call it. But yeah, definitely someone to look at. Keep on your radar.
Yeah, and ultimately it comes down to Kevin Martin just trying to screw everyone out of potential.
Yeah.
I wish Kevin Martin would just say, hey, I'm a grown man. I'm playing. I'm not playing.
That's been the theme over the past 2 weeks because he's been questionable. Game time decision. We don't really know until 5 minutes before tip-off if he's playing or I don't know. And, I mean, he's just been one of those. He's been that guy lately.
Yeah, and why the hell is he playing anyway? That's my question. You have less than nothing to play for. In all reality, you're probably hurting your chances at the number one pick by giving yourself chances to win games like this one. So I just don't understand it. It's not like they're developing young talent. Kevin Martin is a talent, but he's not so necessarily young anymore. Let the man take a couple naps. See you again next year. Quit trying to ruin our DFS nights every time.
Is that reference to the beat reporter last game said something about Kevin Martin is listed as questionable today, but doesn't know. We'll talk to him after his afternoon nap.
Oh, no, I didn't even see that, actually. I just know that, I'm probably about Kevin Martin's age. I know if I was not feeling well, I'd like to take an afternoon nap. And, now I don't have that luxury most days, but Kevin Martin does. Why don't you just say, hey, Flip, guess what? I'm old. I don't feel well. I need to go take a nap. I'll wake up and drink some coffee, see how I feel at 6 o'clock. We'll talk then.
Apparently he does that. He takes afternoon naps every day. So.
Must be nice, right? I mean, it's been a good 25 years since I've had those every day. So
living life.
Yeah, right. One day we'll have our annual or our daily naps like Kevin Martin. So maybe we'll get paid millions to do it too. One day.
Yeah.
All right. Elsewhere at small forward here, you've got guys like Nicholas Batum, obviously in a great spot. Portland, big favorite in this game. Hopefully this one stays close. The Lakers have been surprisingly competitive recently. So I'd like to think maybe they can keep this one close at home. And Batum's been playing really well. He's a guy that can kind of do it all. Not scoring dependent at all, but when he does score, he's got great upside. And sitting there at $6,700 on DraftKings. His FanDuel price also $67. I like Nicholas Batum a lot as well.
I like him. I don't love him. And here's why. The Lakers, they do present a great matchup on paper against small forwards, against any position, really. And that's kind of the problem here with Batum, is that Damian Lillard is going to have a great matchup. LaMarcus Aldridge is going to have a great matchup. So they're going to be sitting there. They're going to be eating on offense. And Batum, I could just see him kind of standing around the perimeter, hanging out, just watching those guys, being a spectator. But, I like Batum when he has a good matchup in Aldridge or Lillard don't necessarily, kind of like last game against the Clippers. when Lillard had a tougher matchup against Chris Paul there. So Batum was forced to carry a larger offensive load. So I think he's a good play, but I would rather pivot towards Wiggins or Tobias Harris in the same range, also with good matchups, and I think they'll see more volume than Batum.
Yeah, and I like the Tobias Harris call as well. I mean, he's consistent. You know he's going to get a ton of minutes, up 35 to 40 pretty much every game, and he's got a nice floor, usually right around 25 points. And we haven't seen one of his upside games in a while since he's only 3 games removed from injury. So, maybe in the great matchup up in pace here tonight, maybe this is the night that he has himself one of those 40, 45-point fantasy outings.
Right.
All right, elsewhere at small forward, you've got the guys you wish you didn't have to play, but they're playing well. You got guys like Chase Budinger playing big minutes. He's playing well. I don't like him on a 10-game slate necessarily, but, his price is just too much. When he was down around low 4Ks, he was fine, but $5,300 tonight on FanDuel. I know everyone's going to look at the game logs and everything, but I just think, you got 20 teams playing tonight. Chase Budinger is not the kind of guy that inspires much confidence when you click on him tonight.
Well, we can't do it anymore, can we? With Kevin Martin back on the fold, granted, we don't know
supposedly
really if he's going to play or whatever. But, I just don't think it's worth the risk considering his price is jacked up and he may see less minutes, less shots if Kevin Martin does actually go out there and do stuff.
Yep.
But, yeah, so I think the better route, especially with other value plays, sitting down there at small forward, you got Omri Caspi. He had 32 fantasy points last game. Obviously, you can't count on that, but 38 minutes in place of Rudy Gay, he's a safe bet to hit over 20 fantasy points, which is basically his value threshold sitting at that salary level.
Yeah, and the great thing about Caspi is, the last matchup was actually a fairly tough one, head-to-head on Trevor Ariza, who's a good defender. And, now he gets a New Orleans team that struggles against small forwards. And like I said, opportunity is going to be there. And you like to think if the Pelicans are going to try to slow anyone down, it's not going to be Caspi. It's going to be DeMarcus Cousins. They're going to throw everything they've got at him. Caspi maybe some extra looks because, as we know, Ray McCallum and company, not exactly consistent scores. You can't really expect much out of these guys. So he's almost a lock for me in pretty much every one of my lineups tonight at that price.
Yeah, I love Omar Caspi, as Charles Barkley would call him, as he has called him, I should say.
Oh man, good old Barkley, butchering everything.
It's not a podcast unless you have a Charles Barkley reference.
Yeah, exactly. Some sort of terrible reference throughout the whole time. All right, elsewhere, small forward. I don't think there's anybody else I'm really too enthusiastic about tonight. Is there anybody else you like?
Otto Porter.
Otto Porter. All right.
Paul Pierce is questionable. I don't think that they'll play him. They're 15-point favorites against the Knicks. I really don't think they're going to push him to play today. And Otto Porter, we saw him last game. He kind of went out there and did his thing, 25 fantasy points. And the matchup is even better against the Knicks. I think you can probably, if you want to go this route on FanDuel, you can lock in Caspi and Otto Porter if Paul Pierce sits, and then just kind of build around that stack elsewhere. I think that's a pretty viable strategy.
Yeah, that's not bad at all. Like you said, what's the point in risking Paul Pierce, who they're going to need for whatever amount of playoff run they'll have? And Otto Porter, young, obviously he can play the minutes, and really very little risk with him at 3,700.
Yep.
So yeah, I like that call. I had actually overlooked him on my list here, but I'm glad you pointed that one out. That's a solid play. So I'll go ahead and cross out all my other small forwards, Caspi and Otto Porter. Moving on. Power forward.
Don't quote me on that. Okay?
No. Oh, I'm definitely going that route in some tournaments. You can stack.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because it will definitely open up our next player to talk about here, Anthony Davis, who obviously playing well. If you can call it a disappointment in his last game, I guess it was a disappointment. Based on his price tag, it was a disappointment, but 20.7 boards, 6 assists, 4 blocks, and a steal. Not exactly a bad performance for most players.
Yeah. If I'm spending on anyone, he's probably the guy. I like him a lot more than Russell Westbrook. Obviously, Westbrook in a not-so-great matchup at Memphis. And the Pelicans need to win. They're sitting in that 9 seed right now, and if they want to have a chance at making the playoffs, they're going to really need to push Davis and their guys. This is a great matchup against Sacramento. They ranked 23rd against power forwards, playing up in pace. Yeah, I like him. I like him a lot, even though, well, let's see, his price tag is 12.2 on FanDuel, 11.4 on DraftKings. So a little bit of a pricing discrepancy there, but I think you can work him in on FanDuel, by using those value plays that we listed earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, I mean, tons to play for. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe if New Orleans wins tonight and Oklahoma City loses, then they would be tied in the loss column, and New Orleans has the tiebreaker over them. So
yeah, I think that's right. I just looked it up, and I think it was a one-game difference. So.
Yeah, so I mean, it's an enormous game for them, a game that they should win, and OKC in a tough spot in the game that Memphis should win. So, I mean, he's going to obviously be the focal point. I expect, like you said, big things out of him tonight. This is obviously every game's the biggest game now, but this one especially, a game you're supposed to win. You got to show up for this one.
Yep. And then if you look at the same time, there's not much opportunity cost in selecting him because power forward today is okay. There's not a lot of great priced options that are really attractive and jumping off the screen at me. So, I mean, you look at it that way, and that's more rationale towards Davis. Because the next option in line is LaMarcus Aldridge. And, I mean, it looks like a great matchup at the Lakers, but kind of as we said before, everyone has a great matchup. All the Blazers have a great matchup against the Lakers, so you don't know if he's going to need to score 30 points and grab 15 rebounds. I mean, Lillard could go out there and do his thing. I mean, anyone else, all the role players could. So I think he's more of a tournament-only option, in my opinion. How do you feel about that?
Well, like you mentioned about kind of sitting back, I mean, we've seen it from Aldridge before where, he does his thing, goes through the motions, does whatever he's doing for the first three quarters. Then if the fourth quarter comes, it's a close game, Aldridge just turns it on, dominates the fourth quarter, and then game over. So This game shouldn't come down to that. And like you said, I mean, everyone has a good matchup. So, yeah, Aldridge probably will go for 20 and 10 in this one, but at $9,300, 20 and 10 is, barely paying off your salary. There's not much upside there.
He doesn't get blocks, he doesn't get steals, and he'll turn the ball over 3 times a game. So, I mean, I just don't really love it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think if I were going to pay up, but not for Davis, it would be more for Pau Gasol, who, yes, he's seeing less minutes, around 35, but, I mean, that matchup against Detroit's front court is a piece of cake for Pau Gasol.
So breaking in with some injury news here that I have on my other feed. Kevin Martin, downgraded to questionable, was previously probable. So, I mean, here we go. A little more fuzz thrown into the situation. I guess we're just going to have to monitor this one up until lineups lock. But, yeah, I mean,
I'd really rather not.
Pottinger becomes a nice play. I don't know. Lorenzo Brown, maybe. He hasn't been that good lately. I'm just looking more towards Pottinger. A lot more towards Wiggins, as you said before. More Timberwolves injury news, if you're up for it.
What do you got?
Anthony Bennett is ruled out.
Good.
He was doubtful, so no surprise there. Ricky Rubio upgraded to questionable. So there goes Zach LaVine, if that comes to fruition. I don't know if it will because they don't have anything to play for, as we said earlier. One more. Gorgie Jang, now questionable.
I thought he was out.
I think he was out or doubtful, but now he's questionable. So,
wow.
I don't know what's going on.
That's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks once again to the Minnesota Timberwolves for throwing multiple wrenches in our plans and everything we've already talked about. But
I'm kind of glad that I made fun of them in yesterday's Recapalooza now.
Yeah, I mean, he almost had to.
Serves them right.
Yeah. All right, so the main takeaway here is just don't do anything with the Timberwolves until tonight. Maybe we hear news, maybe we don't. I mean, everyone gets a bump, obviously, if Martin sits, if Rubio sits. Now, if Jang is back, I'm probably not going to play him still. But, I mean, it's just a whole big whirlwind of just garbage right now with the Timberwolves. So I'm going to wait and see, and I'm not going to bother saying any of their names the rest of the podcast. So if you want to hear about them, you can search their names on Twitter. I'm sick of saying their names now.
Yep.
All right. Elsewhere, power forward here. Now that we are done with all this garbage here from the Timberwolves. Thaddeus Young at $5,900. Not in a bad spot. He's not a great point per minute guy, but I think he's a fine, nice high floor cash guy. But I would rather go with Ersan Ilyasova, FanDuel-wise at least, at $5,800 in a great matchup against Boston. What's your take on those two?
Yeah, price is way too jacked up for Ilyasova on DraftKings. I'm looking at him on FanDuel. I actually have him highlighted in that spot. There's not a lot of great plays in that range. And yeah, I think he presents the most upside out of those players, like you said, Thad Young, maybe Kenneth Faried, tough matchup at San Antonio. So yeah, I'm looking towards Ilyasova.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And to mention Farid, I mean, he's been so unpredictable, and it's been strange recently. He did play really well. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but did play really well last time against the Spurs.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I mean, it's risky. I mean, tournament only as Farid has been most days of his actual life since being in the NBA. But I mean, he does have upside.
He's a beast in college.
Oh yeah,
he was a rebounding record.
Yeah, don't tell that to Rick Pitino. But yeah. I think he actually broke Tim Duncan's double-double record in college, if I'm not mistaken. All right, so with Minnesota obviously being a pain in our ass, we're just going to stop worrying about them, and we're going to move on to other players at power forward. So already touched on a few guys. Who are some cheap guys you like? Obviously, you've got Cody Zeller out, so Marvin Williams is going to get minutes, but he's in a really tough matchup, so no thanks for me there for the most part. I mean, he'll probably have an okay game, but 5,100 now on DraftKings, too much for me. 48 on FanDuel, I guess, is stomachable, but at the same time, I don't even know if that's a word, stomachable. But I would rather pay up a little bit to a guy like Ersan.
Yeah, I don't really love him. Just kind of echoing what you said. One guy you can consider a little bit cheaper on DraftKings, 4.3K, is Anthony Tolliver. Don't love the matchup, but he's going to see 31 to 40 minutes or so. So, I mean, there's some rationale for him over there. But I don't know. That's about it, really. That's all I really have listed. We said Ilyasova. We said Thad Young. Maybe one more guy on par with them. Not an upside guy, but kind of a reliable cash game option is David West. Okay matchup against Charlotte. Price point is fair. A little bit discounted from where we normally see him, but in line with his recent production. Just, one of those cash game filler guys, if you want to consider that.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. I mean, like you said, locked into minutes, and that's all you really need with a cheap guy. You need him to have opportunity, and he's definitely going to have that. So let's move on here to center, where obviously your top option, if you want to, if you're choosing to, if he even plays, DeMarcus Cousins was rumored that he might sit. Yeah, DraftKings. Thank you, DraftKings, for the $10,000 price tag. As we've been saying every single time, huge discount, $1,900 discount. He's 11.9 on FanDuel, so very pricey there. I would much rather pay for Anthony Davis in that spot there if I'm paying. But on DraftKings, really hard not to play DeMarcus Cousins. And this, despite the tough matchup, he did dominate this same front court a few days ago, and he just looks like a man on a mission. He looks unstoppable, and it's unfortunate for him that none of these games actually matter.
Well, I think they matter to, maybe a contract extension, maybe to his status, maybe sign in a shoe deal next year, things like that. Things DeMarcus Cousins is thinking about right now. But yeah, that price tag on DraftKings, oh my God. Are you kidding me?
It's too good.
$2,000 cheaper? Have we ever seen a price discrepancy like that?
Not usually with a superstar like that. I mean, usually it's a cheaper guy that one side hasn't caught up their price of the production. But yeah, not usually with these guys.
Yeah, so I mean, DraftKings, go with him. Do it.
Yeah. One more thank you to DraftKings for that price. Elsewhere at center, you've got Brook Lopez, who's on absolute fire right now. He had a slower game last time out, and at least for the first three quarters, then kind of picked it up in the fourth there. And numbers don't look really impressive. 18-7 with 5 blocks, but still had 37 fantasy points. So Brook Lopez once again in a nice spot here against Toronto, who earlier in the season was a solid defensive team. Since then, been absolutely terrible.
Yeah, I like him. This should be a competitive home game. He's seeing the volume. I mean, you can't dispute that. Another guy I was looking at, strictly tournament play, Andre Drummond, which, I mean, comes as no surprise. I don't even think I have to say strictly a tournament play. But matchup at Chicago isn't great, but Greg Monroe's still out. He's going to see that volume. And he's one of those players, he's just going to score putbacks and, grab rebounds, and he kind of fits into that grinded out style that Chicago likes to do. The only concern I have, per usual, is foul trouble. You got some bigs, Pau Gasol, Joakim Noah, who can draw fouls down there. Very active bigs. And you got Jimmy Butler taking it to the rack. So, I mean, that's where the concern comes with him. I'd say only tournaments, but the upside is there for 50-plus fantasy points.
Oh, yeah. Definitely a lead upside there with Drummond in any matchup, and even in this one. And Here's the guy I really want to ask you about. He's going to be a highly debated player tonight in a tough matchup, but playing great basketball. Enes Kanter, $7,400 on FanDuel. Going up against Marc Gasol, it's tough, yes, but I mean the guy's just been tremendous recently. So, is this a guy that you're playing in some tournaments? Obviously in this matchup, not a cash game play for me, but he's sitting there at $7,400 and $78 on DraftKings. I think he's definitely worth a look in tournaments. I think some people will be scared off from the matchup.
Yeah, I would not commend you for going that route, but I mean, I'm a guy who really likes to do the path of least resistance, and using that rationale, I just can't get off Brook Lopez or Nikola Vucevic. Vuce going up against Minnesota in that, I don't know if we can call them a front court anymore, some infirmary ward, some guys they run out there who are tall.
Yeah. Or maybe they won't play those guys, and maybe some other guys we don't know about will play. Who knows?
Maybe some people we've never even heard of will step out and wear a Timberwolves jersey tonight. But, I'm just really pivoting to those two guys. I think they have better upside considering Kanter's at Memphis. But, like you said, Kanter is one of those guys who's going to see volume. He's the secondary scorer behind Russell Westbrook, especially if the Grizzlies key on Westbrook. More volume could kind of flow his way. And he's going to have a low ownership percentage. So, there is some rationale for tournaments, but I just don't think I'm one of those people who will go that route.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. Vucevic, a much better play. Same with Lopez. Those seem like dollar for dollar best options if you're not going to DeMarcus Cousins on DraftKings, which I wouldn't blame you for going ahead and putting Cousins and Lopez or Vooch and both those guys, because you can do that on DraftKings, and I don't think that's a bad play at all.
You could do that on DraftKings or even Fantasy Aces over there, where you get 2 utility spots. Lately, what I've been doing is throwing 3 centers out because center position has been great lately. When you look at guys like Lopez and Cousins, and some other cheap options too. So
yeah, absolutely not a bad strategy there at all. So other centers to look at here, really not a lot that I like. I mean, I was looking at Justin Hamilton, assuming that Gorgie Jang was out because I was told that he was out. Maybe he's going to play now. I mean, he is still being evaluated for his concussion, so maybe they don't let him play. Maybe the questionable thing is just to troll all of us and piss everybody off around lunchtime. But I mean,
pissed at me.
Yeah, I mean, if
that article yesterday.
Yeah, I don't know. He's in play if everyone else doesn't play, but who knows now what's going to go.
Yeah, here's the thing. I wrote him up on my FanDuel Insider article today on FanDuel. Just because there's no other cheap option that I really am going to look towards. So speaking to that point, I don't think it pays to go that route. I think you have to look at Lopez, Vucevic, Cousins, Drummond, and then call it good. I mean, pick one of those guys, pay up for that. I think there's value at other positions. We talked about Caspi, Porter Jr., some cheap shooting guards, maybe Vasquez at point guard. I think you go with those guys, and then you pay up at center, and you just don't even mess with that bargain bin down there.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. I mean, those are by far the top options, and like you said, I mean, a lot of nights there's a guy down cheap that you really like that's in a good spot, and tonight there's just too much uncertainty, and I think that with all of those top options, especially on a site like FanDuel where you only play one center, if you don't play one of those big guys and they each go for 50+, you're getting behind every single matchup pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I think, we listed, 4 guys up there at the top. I think at least 2 of them will go for 50 fantasy points, if not 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised by that either at all. So with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here for today. Check out all the great content we have at dailyfantasycafe.com. I'm at Big Italy 42. He's at SpencerJL. Anything else you got today, man?
That's it.
All right, we're good. We will see you guys again next time.